It began with a sharp, deliberate knock that sliced through the calm summer air like a blade. Michael, a reserved man who had lived quietly in his humble Wiltshire home for over 30 years, never expected anything to shatter the peace of his life. As he moved toward the door, his mind raced. Was it a neighbor? A delivery? But when he opened it, he was met by 2 officers standing on his doorstep, their expressions unreadable. That's when the world as he knew it tilted. "We're here to investigate a disturbance," one of them said, holding a clipboard. Michael's heart sank. His days were simple: coffee by the pond, tending to his flowers. The peaceful hum of his neighborhood wrapped around him like a cozy blanket. A disturbance? From him? The idea seemed absurd. But he kept his composure and invited them inside. Just minutes later, Annette, the new neighbor with her prim appearance and icy demeanor, stormed in, hurling accusations that left him frozen in place. "He doesn't belong here," she spat venomously, her voice sharp. "He's ruining our village." Michael stood there, stunned. The weight of her words hit him harder than he anticipated. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was personal, filled with prejudice that stung deeper than he had imagined. For a man who had spent decades building a quiet, dignified life, being labeled an outsider in his own home felt unimaginable. What could drive someone to such extremes? This story, of betrayal, defiance, and one man's fight for his reputation, was just beginning to unfold. Stay tuned for how Michael will turn the tables in a battle he never sought, but will never back down from. Michael's morning routine was his sanctuary. As the sun rose, casting its warm amber light over his garden, he took pleasure in the simplicity of brewing his coffee and watering the flowers he had lovingly nurtured over the years. It was a ritual of peace and solitude, a daily reminder of why he had chosen this quiet corner of Wiltshire all those years ago. But that tranquil existence was shattered the day Annette, the new neighbor, moved in next door. At first, he dismissed her cold reception. Everyone adjusts to new places differently, he reasoned. Maybe she wasn't used to the warm, close-knit atmosphere of a small town. But over time, Annette's glaring stares, the sharpness of her remarks, and the way she rejected even the simplest neighborly gestures began to unsettle him. "She's just private," he told himself, holding on to the belief that time would soften her demeanor. But as weeks turned into months, Annette's behavior took an even darker turn. She stayed hidden behind her curtains, only emerging to cast disapproving glances at Michael's modest home. One scorching afternoon, while Michael sat by his small above-ground pond, Annette stood on her porch, phone in hand, taking pictures. When their eyes met, Michael waved, hoping to ease the tension. But instead of responding, she turned away with a sneer. A knot of unease tightened in Michael's chest. Things escalated quickly after that. One day, as he pruned his flowers, Michael was startled by a loud, authoritative knock at the door. 2 officers stood before him, their faces stern. "We've received complaints about noise and disturbances originating from this address," one explained. Michael blinked, momentarily stunned. Noise disturbances? His life was a symphony of stillness. He led the officers through his home, showing them the empty, serene rooms and the peaceful garden that had been his sanctuary for years. As the officers left, the truth behind the complaint became horrifyingly clear. Annette stood at the edge of her property, arms crossed, her voice dripping with venom. "He doesn't belong here," she declared, loud enough for the officers and half the neighborhood to hear. "He's a drifter pretending to fit in. This village deserves better." Michael's mind reeled. It wasn't just an insult, it was an accusation that cut deep into his very soul. A man who had worked tirelessly to build a life here was now being painted as an intruder. His fists clenched. His instinct to defend himself warred with his resolve to remain calm. "I've lived here for 30 years, he said, his voice steady despite the fury bubbling beneath. "This is my home." But Annette wasn't done. Over the next few weeks, her campaign of harassment only intensified. Whispers reached Michael's ears as shopkeepers who had once greeted him warmly now avoided his gaze. Posters began appearing throughout the village, grainy photos of Michael in his garden, captioned with scathing words. Asterisk, "Does this man make you feel safe? Demand a safer neighborhood." Asterisk, each new attack wore him down. Michael spent sleepless nights wondering what he had done to deserve such hostility. His garden, once his refuge, now felt like the stage for Annette's vendetta. Yet, even in his despair, a small flicker of determination burned within him. "She won't win," he muttered to himself, holding a trembling mug of tea. "I won't let her take this from me." Determined to fight back, Michael found support from unexpected allies. Mrs. Bennet, the elderly neighbor, offered unwavering encouragement. "That woman's delusional," she said one evening over the fence. "We all know who you are, Michael. She's the outsider here." Mr. Singh, whose security cameras overlooked Michael's property, provided crucial footage of Annette trespassing, peering into his windows and even breaking branches from his plants to stage her photos. Armed with this evidence, and the support of those who still believed in him, Michael sought legal advice. The legal process was daunting, but Michael threw himself into it, gathering statements, compiling footage, and filing a formal complaint. The day he handed over the mountain of evidence, he felt a flicker of hope for the first time in weeks. When the court summons arrived at Annette's door, her smug confidence began to waver. At the hearing, Michael sat quietly while his solicitor presented the case. The CCTV footage was damning, showing Annette crouching by his fence, phone trained on his home, trespassing, and even tampering with his garden. Witness testimonies painted her as someone obsessed with destroying a neighbor who had done nothing wrong. Even the police report from the day she made false claims worked against her. Annette's defense was weak. She clung to the narrative that she was protecting the village, but the magistrate saw right through her facade. "This is harassment," the magistrate declared. "And it stops now." Annette was slapped with an antisocial behavior order, forbidding her from approaching Michael or continuing her defamation campaign. She was also ordered to pay damages and legal fees. It was a small but significant victory for Michael. The aftermath was swift. Annette, once a force of disruption, became a pariah. The villagers who had believed her lies now turned their backs on her, embarrassed by their complicity. One by one, the defamatory posters disappeared, torn down by her own hand, all under the watchful eyes of the constables. Michael watched from his garden, a quiet sense of satisfaction settling over him. Though the scars of Annette's campaign remained, Michael found comfort in the support of his true neighbors. His garden, once tainted by her intrusion, became a place of healing once again. The village, too, began to feel like home once more. Michael's story wasn't just about enduring hardship. It was about reclaiming his peace and standing firm against prejudice and hatred. As he sat by his pond one afternoon, the sun warming his face, he allowed himself a small smile. Annette's voice, which had once threatened to drown him, was now just another memory, one he had overcome with quiet strength and the truth on his side. Reflecting on everything that had happened, Michael realized something profound. Peace isn't merely the absence of conflict. It's about protecting what matters most. His quiet life in Wiltshire wasn't defined by the accusations or the rumors that had spread. It was defined by the decades of love and care he had poured into his home, his garden, and the community he cherished. This experience taught Michael that sometimes standing your ground is about more than defending yourself. It's about showing others the power of integrity and perseverance. Annette had tried to isolate him, but in the end, her actions only strengthened the bonds Michael shared with the people who truly knew him. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Michael raised a glass to his garden, to the village, and to the simple beauty of a life reclaimed. "This is my home," he said softly, a smile tugging at his lips. For the first time in weeks, those words felt unshakable. To stories. Grow by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Let's hit 100,000 subscribers and keep sharing the stories that inspire and remind us all of the strength found in the everyday.